All right, we're back. We decided to take a year off, so don't mind that. But other than that year, we're back and better than ever.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's good to be back, Tyler.
All right,
It was just a small break. We're trying to align our schedules, but
it only took a
I'm
year
glad
to
it
do
worked
it.
out. Yeah.
All right, so just going right into it. Week 18 finally just happened. The season's over for many suffering fans like myself. For you, Josh, it's just starting, it seems.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this is the expectation. Week one for you is pretty much the wild card round.
Yeah.
So just starting it by things that we kind of learned about teams in week 18. The Steelers made the playoffs. But something that concerns me about them is not only the Steelers, so they're usually a pretty easy beat in the playoffs. The past couple of years, they keep making it because they keep being average and they keep getting beat for it.
Yeah.
But this is especially bad because sure, Mason Rudolph has looked decent enough in his time this season, but they struggled on beating Tyler Huntley. Like this is a team that could barely beat the Ravens backups. And I just don't really think they actually offer any competitive edge, which is a shame because I think the Colts do. I think the Jaguars could. I don't know if they would for sure, but there are a lot of teams that missed out on the playoffs that could offer more in terms of competition, but didn't have the record for it.
Yeah, and I feel like something that we both agree with as far as like team building and um general strategy goes is like what are the Steelers doing? You know,
Yeah.
like what I get it as ownership probably is like I'm happy we made the playoffs again. We have a winning record, but like especially being cursed with Kenny Pickett, which I really feel like is a curse because Kenny Pickett, although he's been injured and he hasn't been able to do his job, his current job right now is being mediocre enough but good enough that the Steelers can't move on from him
Yep.
but never getting anywhere. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Like they basically are a bye week to the Bills this week. Like, and obviously the NFL, anything can happen, but I'm sure Vegas agrees with that. I'm sure the Bills are probably over 7-point favorites in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, it brings into question like the value of record. Obviously, NFL is going to be record based forever, but you see like the college football playoffs, everyone was mad that they made the best competitive matchup. And then the ending up national champions got taken to overtime and only really lost because Alabama made a bad play call. Like this is a situation where the committee would have done something different. And it's a shame to see the NFL have to go to an uncompetitive game because in the end, I do think their system's more reasonable. Not having a playoff committee is kind of obviously a good thing,
yeah,
but you do lose out on times like this where you have teams like the Colts could beat the Bills. You never know. Like the Bills are
yeah, the
weird.
Colts are a legit team.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Colts like if my thing with the Steelers is like if the Colts get into a shootout, the Colts will shoot you out. They're more than happy to do that. But the Steelers, like if things don't go their way, like it's not looking good. It's really
No.
not looking good. And the Bills are a team that can go. The Bills are a team that can do two things: either go up big or go down big, or at least put
Yeah.
themselves in a hole. For example, with two huge Josh Allen interceptions that were just like turnover worthy plays by the definition. I was shocked when I saw those two interceptions. Anyway, back to the Steelers though. I don't think that if the game goes how they expect it to in those first two drives, I think the game will be over within, the first quarter.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do if you're the Steelers and you let off an accidental bomb to Gabe Davis or Khalil Shakir, and now
Yeah.
you're down 14 points in the first quarter? I
Yeah.
don't think you have the offensive firepower to fight back. They have
No.
the ability to fight a mediocre team and they can win a decent amount of games, but you don't have offense to really fight. I mean, the rushing offense has finally found an identity again, but you can't rely on a running game to make you up 14 points that you let off super early. And so you relying on such perfection from your defense against the two seed.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's like not just the players too, but like I don't even believe in the offensive coaching there. I don't think that they have what it takes either to like scheme up scheme up what they need to come back from 14 if they do go down 14. And especially with Mason Rudolph, like you said earlier, like if you look at his A dot, it's like I'm pretty sure it's like below 5. I don't know. I saw like his first game that he started, and it was all
Yeah.
around the line of scrimmage. Like they were extremely, extremely conservative with the plays they were calling up for him.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of like even like medium or like intermediate level throws. It's all like short stuff and gimmies that they just expect guys to go forward. Like the game that 2 games ago, do you remember who they played? But Pickens had like a bomb, like 92-yard touchdown, and it was like a 10-yard pass that just went all the way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're not an explosive team, and I think we both agree they're not going to get very far. We'll see in
No.
our playoff bracket
Right.
where we both have them going.
Right. Very far. And speaking of teams that are kind of questionable on how far they're going to go, I think that
Yeah.
leads right into the Eagles. I mean, this is a team that went to the Super Bowl last year and have lost their identity completely on both sides of the ball. Like, this is a team that's just struggling, and it's been talked about a lot. Obviously, there's been a lot of breakdowns on why they're struggling, but something that I want to focus on, because I have a video coming out on it on Saturday, is their third down struggles. Because that Giants game was ugly. It
Hmm.
was 24-0 going into the half against Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor. Like, and that's all your starters playing for the division title against a game that you should win. And it's not like you can say, oh, well, they thought they were going to roll through for an easy win. The Cowboys played Washington, and it was the same exact situation. You play a bad team for the division title. Like, it was a very similar situation. One team scored 40 points, the other one let off 24 before they pulled their starters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not like New York going into the week. Like we once Daniel Jones got injured and stuff started happening, like New York was viewed as a lot like not a lottery pick, that's NBA, but like a top 5 pick contender, just like Washington is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to go in and not handle business, it's frightening, and especially because they lost to the Cardinals too. Now the Cardinals are a good team, especially with Kyler back. But I mean, you talked about their identity being lost. James Conner put up like over 100 rushing yards on them. Old, old bones James Conner, who is like running on. He's had a good year when he's been healthy, but for a team that's supposed to be really built in the trenches, like they're not doing well right now.
Oh, I mean, there's some ineffectiveness on first downs. I mean, they're evening it out. Luckily, that's not like they're overly pass heavy or overly run heavy.
Hmm.
But if when you're falling behind the chains, I broke down all of their third downs from the last game, and only one was converted, and it's because it was a 3rd and 1, and that's as free as it gets for the Eagles.
Yeah, that's 3rd and 0 right there.
Yeah. So when you have an actual money down, like you can't get it done. And a lot of it seems to be because they can't just remember we're better than these guys.
Yeah,
It's truly like they need to go back to backyard football on third down and just say, hey, we're playing the Giants, man. Like who on the Giants could man to man take on AJ Brown? If I throw a jump ball to AJ Brown, I expect him to be able to nail it 10 times out of 10 against the Giants.
yeah,
But they're never doing that. They're not really putting the ball in the hands of their playmakers. They're putting a lot on Jalen Hurts, who hasn't really been that guy for them right now. And you can't expect him to be when the rest of the team's struggling. So there needs to be some sort of change in how they approach those third downs. Because when you're behind the chains and you're not giving the ball to your best guys, what do you expect?
I don't know, man. I mean they were doing so well when they were, obviously it's not as simple as that, but when AJ Brown was getting 125 yards a game for 6 straight games, they were doing well. I mean, how much do you think, Tyler, as someone who was watching film very recently on the Eagles, how much of it is a Hurts problem? How much of it is a defensive problem? How much of it is a coaching problem?
I mean, what I was looking at was the offense, but that defense gave up a score pretty much every time the Giants got the ball.
Yeah,
So it's a both sided problem. The defense
yeah,
has its own set of problems. They're getting torched by everybody. They had big gains and big plays getting blown up on them by Tyrod Taylor. When you're like, really? Like, they don't even have a true one guy, and all of a sudden they're throwing it 30 yards down the field for a touchdown. Like,
yeah. They're like Darius Slayton and
right.
Wandale. Not anything against Darius Slayton. They're much better than me, but if we're talking about like why are they having bigger plays than AJ Brown, and I think Devontae Smith got injured, but even like Dallas Goddard
right?
and
You have so
they
many
have
good
good
players.
playmakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. I feel like I feel like the coaching, especially like you look at what the Colts are doing right now, and honestly, okay, the Cardinals have not been that bad, as bad as their record. They had Josh Dobbs at quarterback, and I think we forget that, but I really think that they missed their coaching both offensively and defensively because they have almost the exact same team. You do lose a lot of players, but a lot of your main players are still on the team. It makes no sense why they're doing this much worse if you just look at the players wise. There's definitely a lot more going on there.
Yeah. And I mean, in a sense, you got better on the trenches, yet you're
Yeah.
not really beating the ground game. Like, I don't know, it's going to be an interesting game against the Buccaneers. We'll get into that a little bit more when we do our playoffs, but it's going to be a strange matchup where the Eagles should be a slam dunk pick here, but they're not at all.
Yeah,
And
not at all.
it's very
When you
interesting.
lose to the Giants, oh man, the Bucks are not a guarantee right now.
No, they've
Not at
lost
all.
5 of their last 6.
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
won one game, and
They
it
only
was an
won one
overtime
game
win.
against the Giants,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was an overtime win
And it was
against the Giants.
close. Yeah, it was yeah. That was I remember watching that. Um I was driving from Indiana to Wisconsin. I had the game.
Oh,
Maddie had the game on so I could hear it.
oh man,
I
what
was
a
like shocked. I was shocked. We started watching it halfway through and I'm like, what? Like, can you repeat the score again? I was shocked it was close. I was like, what the hell? But yeah, the Eagles are not doing too hot.
no.
If
And I mean,
you're Tyler, if you're the Niners, do you want to face the Eagles or the Bucks after round one?
I think you're fine either way.
I
I think I'd rather face the Bucks because they don't have the upside of the Eagles,
yeah, I
but
agree.
the floor's higher.
I think that there's a world where the Bucks give the Niners a better game than the Eagles. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's a world the other way too. But if you asked me that 6 weeks ago, I would have laughed in your face if you said that. I mean, Baker's been playing good, but the Eagles 6 weeks
Not
ago were like 10-1.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, as an NFC team, especially someone like the Niners, where you're guaranteed the divisional round, you're feeling real good right now. You don't have to play pretty much anybody because,
yeah,
I mean, there's no scary wildcard team you don't want to face. The Rams, they could take down as a division rival. I
yeah.
mean,
It's a
the
division
Packers,
rival that the Niners have for years had the number of. I'll
yes.
be honest, and that's like I would say that's an objective statement. Obviously, we lost when we didn't have our starters in for the second half last week, but if you look the last 3-4 years when we've had a healthy quarterback, we don't lose to the Rams.
No, yeah. I mean, it would be nice to play a division rival again, especially one that, like you said, you have beaten up for a little bit now. Your team's finally turned the corner and just you win your division games. You win the games you have to win, and you
Yeah,
keep doing that. So, I mean, as a team like that on the NFC side, you're definitely looking pretty. But on the AFC side, you're not looking pretty. Like all the AFC teams are very interesting cases, except for the Steelers. And that's something I want to talk about because going into the week, we weren't sure if the Bills were going to be in the playoffs at all. They end up coming out with a 2 seed. So in that Bills Dolphins game, like, what did you really notice from that? Because it wasn't pretty. I watched it again today just to like make sure I wasn't missing anything, and it just wasn't. It didn't look like two playoff teams battling. It looked like two middle teams battling.
yeah. It looked like such a weird game because like coming into the game, I think most people expected a shootout with two very electric offenses, and it just absolutely was not. I mean, Allen came in and I think his first two picks were in the end zone, not
Yeah, they were.
not to one of his players and it gets tipped or something. It was straight to a defender. And I think that the Dolphins got a little complacent when they went up 14-7. But I was honestly, one of my biggest takeaways was that going into the week, I thought that the Bills were a Super Bowl contender. And I still do. I mean, Josh Allen is such an electric player that can go on a run, a Joe Flacco 2012-esque run that could absolutely bring them to the Super Bowl. But I was surprised how well the overall team played as far as like if you look at the box score goes, like they played pretty well, and that kick return obviously is kind of a fluke, but um they still held the Dolphins to like 18 or 17 points. I don't remember. Did the
14.
Dolphins get a field goal? It was 15.
14.
Yeah,
They
14.
didn't score
Okay.
again.
It was like two scores. They held the Dolphins to two scores, which I was really shocked by, especially because um Rasul Douglas went out with injury too. I mean, they were running out like nobody's at corner, which also the Dolphins were too. I mean,
Right.
did you see the play where Melvin Ingram was in coverage?
Yeah, yeah, against Dalton Kincaid. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I don't know what was going on there,
They
but
have linebackers. Do they not believe in linebackers?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But the the Bills feel like a team that like a lot went really right at the end of the season, and I really don't know what's going to happen next year. Like regardless of this year in the playoffs, like is Diggs back? I'm not sure. Even with Diggs back, I think that they really need another playmaker because Gabe Davis has not shown up. Khalil Shakir is a good slot player,
Mhm.
but they really need someone to take. Oh, and then obviously Dalton Kincaid has been good, but he's also not, he's not beating a good corner on the outside.
Yeah.
Um that was my biggest takeaway from the game was that without Stephon Diggs, like it just felt like the Bills offense needed something else.
Yeah. And that's something I've been noticing a little bit is when they need that miracle play and Josh Allen's doing Josh Allen things, they always throw the ball either obviously Gabe Davis 70 yards down the field, or it's just Stephon Diggs over and over and over again. So yeah, that's why you have and pay Stephon Diggs. But at some point, when you're putting all that pressure on him and you double team Stephon Diggs, all of a sudden you're looking at Gabe Davis being the number one. Can he win a one-on-one every time? Can Khalil Shakir? I can tell you no. I just watched his film too. So like you have a team that's full of really good players, but you don't have somebody that can fill in that true number two role to be able to just be a solid good player. Like you don't have anybody that can fill it in for you.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Dolphins too. Like
What do you what do you do this offseason if Diggs says, I am tired of this roller coaster of having Josh Allen as my quarterback, which for the record, I like Josh Allen as a quarterback, but Diggs has a history of not being patient, I would say, with situations. And Diggs says, I want out. What do you do?
I mean, you have to trade him. You
Yeah.
can't cut him. That's
No, you can't. I mean,
not how it
I
works.
just looked, the dead cap's like over 20 million if you cut him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're trading him. And
Yeah. I
then
mean,
you're looking at, I mean, it's a good wide receiver class. So you're not screwed. You could take
yeah.
a receiver in the second round and get at least a good 1B. I don't know if he could be a 1A in the second round, but depending how far you go, too, because if you lose early, you have a better pick. You have a better chance at somebody. Maybe somebody falls. Maybe Troy Franklin falls to you, and you're like, hey, imagine what Josh Allen can do with a true wide receiver one that also is a deep
Is
threat.
he the Oregon receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some film stuff on him on Twitter. He looks pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, Bo Nix had
Yeah.
to have someone to throw
Don't
to.
tell my dynasty league mates, not including you, Tyler, but second round pick target.
Hey, you got to watch out. I'm on a rebuild. So,
Yeah, you have an earlier second round pick than me. Well, you have an
definitely.
earlier every pick than me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the Dolphins, too. I mean, the Dolphins, I don't know how to say it. Like, their defense wasn't bad. For the Dolphins, you're looking at a team where you did hold the Bills to 14 offensive points. That's a good defensive showing for a team that's not that good defensively,
Hmm.
but their offense seemed to be the problem. And it's not the running game. The running game looked amazing. Like I was watching that and I was just like, wow, like a Kane or a Caney, I don't know how you say it,
Achan.
is a stud. A chain. He's a stud. He's way better than I thought he was. His film, I don't know, I guess I missed it completely. Like he's a good player. And you're looking at a guy who's bursting through the defense all the time. And when you're running the ball like that, and you didn't even have Mostert, because Jeff Wilson being your two back, he didn't really do too much in the game. You have Mostert and him running on the ball over and over and over again. You've got a good team, which I actually like for their matchup. I wrote about this and tweeted about this. but the passing game was the problem. Everybody
Yeah.
was out of sync. Tua was missing passes. He was throwing picks that really just didn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
that's not his game. I don't know why he's all of a sudden trying to play this hero ball because it's not what he's been about. So I don't know why he's changing that now. Like the offense is supposed to rely on those playmakers, not Tua, because Tua isn't Josh Allen. And that's fine. That's you can still be elite doing that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he led the league in passing yards for a reason, but it doesn't matter when you're just not completing passes at all.
Yeah. Did you see that I think it was the Dolphins. I think that they had only beat one team with a winning record.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know because I like as a Niners fan, obviously I like Mike McDaniel because he came from the Shanahan coaching tree and he's had a lot of success. I mean, he turned Tua from what looked like a bust in his rookie year, a really bad bust,
Yeah.
to a pretty good player. I mean, I remember hearing a comp at the time, Jimmy Garoppolo, like he's Jimmy Garoppolo but younger. And I don't think it's fully true, but he very much is like a game manager in a West Coast offense. Like he's not, I don't think that he's a game changer
No.
in the same sense that like Josh Allen can be. But I mean, they didn't have Waddle on Sunday night,
Mhm.
and that definitely hurts them given that they pretty much only have two
Right.
receivers that are
All of a
good.
sudden you're on Claypool and Barrios, and
Yeah.
they're
And
talented,
that's,
but
I mean, you already know what throwing a Claypool looks like. That's although he says he's a top three receiver in the league.
right.
But yeah, the Dolphins, I don't know how much of it. I think I have to cut. I think you have to give Mike McDaniel some credit given that he's had so much success, but it really does feel like Tua isn't stepping up in these games that they need him to. And in a sense, he's overstepping, really, like you're saying. Like he really is trying to play hero ball when what got them there, what gets them success is him not playing hero ball.
Right. Is letting Tyreek be the hero.
Yeah, which is exactly I think that the honestly, Jimmy Garoppolo comp isn't that bad in that sense that like you have to he's never gonna play hero ball. When you give him the ball to play hero ball, he's not gonna I don't know. I don't think that he has what it takes to win in the playoffs either in that sense. Because like too, like you get in the playoffs, very rarely are you like winning every single game and it's going perfectly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means for the future of the Dolphins or for Tua, but if I'm the Dolphins, I still give Tua another year, obviously. But I
Yes.
don't I don't know at this point, like how close is he approaching his the end
He
of
should
his
be coming up.
contract?
I believe next year would be his last. They could franchise tag him and kind of make it a long drawn out process, but
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
running out of time. I mean, Burrow signed an extension, Herbert signed an extension, Love signed an extension. Everyone in his class is signing except for him. Hurts obviously got a massive extension. So Tua's kind of the odd man out. He hasn't gotten it yet. And he has to earn it for sure. He's at least given hope that he'll go somewhere. But I mean, if he struggles and kind of goes back to this weird, almost Josh Allen style, and you're not, then you could be looking at an offseason where you're looking for other things. You're taking late round flyers on Joe Milton because
yeah,
you're saying, hey, maybe he'll be able to develop in our system and run it better than anyone who's played for Shanahan could even do it.
yeah,
But I mean, it's an interesting offense where you have the ability to be really good and you're running the ball well, which is so rare for a team that seems to be so spread offensy, but they're running the ball like an absolute unit. And that'll be a big part in their Chiefs game.
yeah,
Because against the Chiefs, you're playing in 0 degree weather. All of a sudden, you're looking at a game where you're going to run the ball a lot.
yeah,
You have two, three good running backs that you really have faith in that have played in your system for a while or is a rookie stud. And I'd have faith that they can win this game because they can run the ball, because they can play more physical than the Chiefs. That's not saying much, but like I would almost be glad as Mike McDaniel that you can take the ball out of Tua's hands for this first game because it gives you a little bit of time to get him back in sync, right the ship a little bit, say, hey man, this isn't about you. It's just a cold day. Like we're going to run the ball more.
yeah,
And you get him time to just be on rhythm again. And then in the meantime, you don't have to worry about Spag's crazy defensive system because like it always happens. They get so much better by the end of the year that you're like, oh man, that Chiefs defense is really good. Their corners are playing great. Trent McDuffie, you already know I'm a big fan of him. Legere
Yeah.
Sneed's having a great year. So
Yeah.
you're looking at a defense I don't want to throw against, ideally. And now
Mm-mm.
I don't have to because I can run the ball 30 times a game. So you got an efficient offense like that, run the ball. Run it
Yeah.
with Tyreek, run it with Waddle, run it with your three running backs you have faith in. Like you have the ability, they have the blueprint to win without needing Tua to do too much, which is exactly what they need if they want to continue to make a deeper playoff push.
Yeah. I agree. I think if they can get in there and run the ball and execute their game plan, I think they absolutely can win against the Chiefs. But if Tua starts doing hero ball, things are not going to look good.
Yeah, it's going to get a little ugly.
Yeah.
Another team that's been struggling, a lot of throughout the whole year too. They've been just pretty inconsistent, which is not to be said as unexpected, but certainly not something you were betting on for the beginning of the season, and that's the Jaguars. Jacksonville kind of been struggling all year. In the beginning, they were uncertain, but everyone's like, okay, we'll let him figure it out, right? Trevor Lawrence is good. He's Trevor Lawrence. And this team will kind of slowly roll into the season, kind of remember, oh, yeah, we're the Jaguars. We're good now. But it never actually happened. And they collapsed against the Titans in Mike Vrabel's last game. Of course, the Titans wanted that win real bad, but you lost a big game right there. You lost a playoff berth because of it. I mean, it really just the season kind of collapsed on them in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, at one point when I don't remember exactly when it was, but like they had lost a game and they were still in playoff contention. Let me pull up their schedule. Jaguars. Did they play the Chiefs? It might have been.
I mean, they should have, right?
Maybe it was against the Bengals. I think it was against the Bengals. They played the Bengals, lost in overtime, but they were still for in contention for the first seed. Sorry, did I say first pick earlier? I meant first seed in the AFC. And then things just went downhill. I mean, lost to the Browns, lost to the Ravens, lost to the Bucks, beat the Panthers. I mean, good for you. You beat the worst team
Right.
in football.
So did everyone else.
And then lost to the Titans, whose head coach just got fired. Now I don't agree with that firing, but um, but still, I mean, you look at this team, you expected them to come in and dominate the division, honestly. Um, and you came out of it looking terrible. And honestly, one of the honestly tied for like the worst team in the division this year, as far as like not like record wise, but like Houston and the Colts, I think were better than them this year. And
Yeah.
then they're just I think the Titans were pretty similar to them in that the Titans probably did about as good as you expected them to, honestly, but the Jaguars massively underperformed.
Yeah. And they have good pieces on both sides of the ball. And they were going into a division that in the beginning of the season wasn't really supposed to be good. Obviously, Texans came out of nowhere. CJ Stroud made huge jumps going from college to the pros, in my opinion. His film just was an Ohio State guy when you're
Yeah.
looking at his college film. But then he goes to the pros and he's like, just kidding. I'm an everything guy. And he
Yeah.
goes into Houston. He's got a great team. The Colts, quick turnaround. They had good pieces, but a lot of people just had all of a sudden real big years, lots of sophomore boosts there, good seasons from a lot of people all around. And we'll talk about them a little bit more, but you're looking at an AFC South that was supposed to be bad and end up being one of the better divisions almost. It's like one of the most competitive, at least.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and even the Titans, you can't count them out. And Jacksonville at Tennessee for the last game of the year is never a good idea.
Yeah.
So keep scheduling that because you never know what's going to happen. I love the AC South Week 18 games; they're always ridiculous,
Yeah.
and I hope that never stops. But
Yeah. No,
man,
I think last year, if I'm being honest, last year the Jaguars probably overperformed a bit. And I think this was a little bit of regression. I think regression, I don't think it was all regression, but I do think that they like regression as in like they had positive regression last year, negative regression this year. Like not really something that they could control. But Lawrence really wasn't that much worse this year than he was last year. he had a lot of like they weren't necessarily drops, but a lot of passes that were good passes by him for touchdowns this year that were either just really good pass breakups or complete drops by receivers. I mean, he had Calvin Ridley completely disappear for half the season
Yeah.
in different weeks when you expected him, especially after week one. I mean, you expected him to be a dominant wide receiver one again.
Hmm.
What do you think of the Jaguars moving forward?
I mean, they're in a great spot still, other than
Yeah.
their division being tough. I mean, they have a quarterback to where I truly believe, in a coaching staff and an overall roster to where I believe that given the offseason, given the draft and all that, they should be on paper still better than the Colts. And I think the Colts have done a great job. Like I said, we'll get into that. But even though the Colts are building something great, they have a better quarterback. And that's not a shot at Anthony Richardson. I like what he did. That's not a shot at Gardner Minshew. He had an amazing year. Talk about contract year for a backup. Like, this is a guy who keeps getting opportunities and keeps looking good. But the Jaguars should be better than they are. And I think it's going to take some good player development, some good coaching. I think Doug Peterson can do it. I absolutely do. I think Jacksonville has everything that it takes to take a big step forward next year. Because when you think about it, this is their sophomore season with Doug Peterson. This is their second real season. I would say Lawrence's first season doesn't count. That was a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
Their first
Agreed.
season with the semblance of a true wide receiver one in Ridley, but he was extremely inconsistent, and you can pretty much draw a line between how he was playing and how the whole team did it in the record. Like, when he had a good game, they won, and obviously that's how it works. But there's a direct correlation when you have a true wide receiver one, or at least a really talented two.
It makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
does.
mean, what do you think? I think the Jaguars are
I
really in a good
agree.
spot.
I mean, as far as like when I look at a team and I say I don't feel like good about their like you heard me talk about the Bills and receivers. I actually think Jacksonville has a pretty solid receiving core in like Calvin Ridley's a good player. I don't know what they're going to do with him because I think he was actually weirdly a 29-year-old on a fifth year contract. I mean, a fifth year option. I mean,
He's also,
because he got
free
suspended and
agent.
he came out so late. I don't know if he's the future there,
I
but
mean,
I
he's
mean,
going to be expensive.
yeah, he's going to be expensive, and based on the way he played this year, I really don't know if that's worth it. But even Zay Jones and not Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk are two pretty good players. I mean, Evan Ingram is a good player. I think any team, honestly, going to the offseason, they get a receiver. I think it's a good thing, generally speaking. I don't think you can have once you had three receivers, I think you can have too many, but it's never a bad thing to have more. But that's usually where I would look for first. But I don't necessarily think that with this team. With this team, I think that they need a good, solid pass rusher beside Josh Allen.
And Josh Allen's also a free agent, I believe.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he might be. Yeah, I feel like they need someone else back there that can get to the passer because when you just have one pass rusher who's consistently beating the offensive line, like it's really easy to double team them and stuff. They need help there. I
Yeah,
would
I
say.
mean, I do every offseason, I break down the NFL teams, and I didn't post it at all last year, but I did my team needs already this year. And, you look at the top three for Jacksonville, it's tackle, edge, and wide receiver.
Mhm.
So two of those three we just touched on, like, and that's kind of looking at Josh Allen leaving. But even if he stays, I would want to see another one. Trayvon Walker didn't
Yeah.
work out. They fell a little bit too hard into that
Can you
passion.
imagine Hutchinson shot? Like that would have been it
That's
was the
dangerous.
obvious pick at the time. And looking back, it's just like that was so much honestly even worse than it was at the time.
Yeah.
I really don't know what was going through their mind, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Some
that's the Jaguars for you.
yeah. um well, moving on to two teams with literal like almost opposite years, the Texans and the Colts. Tyler, what do you feel about them?
I mean, I'll talk about the Colts. Obviously, Texans are building something great. I feel it's been talked a lot about. Obviously, everything's going well for them. And D'Amico Ryans has been better than I even imagined. And I was pretty excited for him. But I would say kind of the most impressive part of the AFC South season as a whole is the Colts. Um, Anthony Richardson came out and proved a lot of people wrong. I didn't see him as that much of a project. Yes, he had some issues at Florida, and he wasn't a starter ready guy like what we saw Stroud as and Young as, but he wasn't Malik Willis. So looking at him, it was very interesting because everyone was saying he was basically just another Malik Willis. He was another guy where it's, you don't want to draft him until a little bit later because you're not going to start him. And he came in and he produced. They were,
Yeah.
I had him in Dynasty. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, there were games where he'd play one quarter, get a concussion, and drop 20 points. Like,
It was a super small sample size, but if you extrapolated his his play during those quarters that he was healthy, obviously it wasn't too many, but he would have been like it would have been like the greatest quarterback season fantasy wise ever. And it wasn't sustainable, and I don't think that they'll continue doing that. But no, he looked good and promising. Um, but also just the offense as a whole and the team as a whole. I mean, Gardner Minshew I think he's a top 32 quarterback. I don't
mhm.
think he's a top 25 quarterback, but I think he's a top 32 quarterback. But to do what they're doing with Gardner, I mean, I think even if Anthony Richardson isn't a fully developed passer yet next year, still, I still think that that team will be a-okay.
Yeah. And something that I looked at a lot last year because they were rookies and they were guys that I was following around, their tackles are great. They have amazing offensive tackles. And when you have two good tackles, it's hard to lose. It's hard to have bad games where you're
Yeah.
getting destroyed. And you can kind of see that. Gardner Minshew wasn't running for his life out there against a really good defense in Houston. Like they had a good thing. They have a good wide receiver trio. I don't think they have a number one. I don't really like Pittman as a number one.
I don't
And I've
either.
been saying it for years now.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
you have two really solid twos. You have a guy who should be a good three as your essentially number four if you were to upgrade a receiver with Alec Pierce. I like him a lot. He hasn't done everything I imagined he could, but you're obviously good at running back. You're paid Jonathan Taylor because you don't have a quarterback to pay at the moment. So you can kind of take that essentially financial L, but everybody can play on this team. This is a team that definitely saw a massive player development boost when they got Shane Steichen.
Yeah.
And it really just proved how effective he is. He's an amazing coach, potential coach of the year, in my opinion. He won't get it. There's too many good
I don't think
coaches.
he'll get it either, but I think he deserves it in my opinion.
Yeah, he maybe won't even make the top three, but that's how good the coaches have been this year. D'Amico Ryan's obviously been great. Kevin Stefanski bringing Joe Flacco off the couch to be elite all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Like you got so many good coaches.
Stefanski has been an underrated coach for a while, and I honestly haven't given him the credit he deserves for years, partially because of quarterback play.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean that was out of his control. I mean, you get a semblance of like an average quarterback in Joe Flacco. He's definitely not. I don't think he's elite.
It's
But
unsustainable as well.
yeah. I mean, he's been great in a small sample size, but I don't think he's an elite quarterback. But even just with that, I mean, this team is people are talking about him as the number one threat to the Ravens, like the only threat to the Ravens right now in the
Yeah.
AFC, which is wild to think about. When you came into the year and you obviously expected Deshaun Watson the to get better, regardless of the off the field, which absolutely, that's important too. But you expected him to at least get better from how terrible he was last season. He did, but not like to where he was in Houston. He gets injured. You expect the season to be over, and then Joe Flacco comes in and it and they're dominating right now.
Yeah. They're a good team and they're scary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what they're building, obviously, really cool. You can't hope but wish that it wasn't Deshaun Watson at quarterback, not only for off field things, but just he's been average to be nice since he's come back from his suspension and from his years off. Like, this is a team that is winning with essentially a rented offense. But their
Yeah,
defense kept them in the games the whole year.
yeah,
And I mean, you can't help but wish, as if I was a Browns GM, I would be kicking myself that I made that deal because all of a sudden you got a team where if you put a young franchise quarterback there, you have a massive playoff window.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
now you have a fully guaranteed deal that's really,
And
really
you're
hard
not,
to get out
yeah,
of.
like how much, what percentage, I don't know the exact percentage of the cap, but it's a significant percentage of their cap not currently playing.
Yeah,
If they had this cap left, they could be doing a lot. Didn't they trade three first?
they traded a lot of that.
Yeah,
They don't have a
and those
first
three
rounder.
first, if you had that like 50 million per year back and the three first, oh man, this team could turn into a dynasty,
I
honestly.
mean,
They're so good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're dangerous, but you hate to look at it like this. But you put Baker Mayfield on that team, and all of a sudden you're looking at a team that really is contending with the Ravens.
Yeah,
Not because
that
of Baker,
honestly, I
but
I forgot about Baker. That's a good point. If they had just let Baker get healthy again and under Stefanski, I think he could have gone back to like what he was doing his rookie and junior year in the NFL.
yeah. And then imagine what they do next year when they have a new running back, because Jerome Ford's done an amazing job. Love Jerome Ford, but
No, he's
I
not the
don't know.
running back of the future. And Nick Chubb's coming off his second ACL tear, and
Yeah,
he's like 28 or something like that.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is the end of the road for him. I truly don't. I'm not a doctor, so it beats me. But even if he
Yeah.
comes back, you
I
need
mean, I,
a
I, I
backup
still,
plan.
even if he comes back, it's his first year off the ACL. I don't really think that you can expect too much of him. And then after that, I mean, you're in, you're in the territory when running backs start to fall off. But thankfully, as you and me both agree, running back is a very replaceable position. So,
Yes,
I'm sure that they can find a replacement for him just fine.
certainly. There's a lot of talented backs in this draft class, but
Yeah,
and at ranges where they can get him because they traded all their top draft backs.
yeah.
But moving on to a team that does have running back figured out, the Raiders. You know,
Mhm.
didn't like the Raiders coming in the season. Got to be honest. Thought they were kind of hopeless, and they were for most of the season. Josh McDaniels did exactly what he normally does and completely struggled. But all of a sudden, Antonio Pierce comes in, and this is a team that could be really
They're,
good.
yeah, they're dangerous. Yeah,
Yeah. And especially with the Chargers collapsing their window, they wasted their time. They need
yeah,
to retool at the very least. So they
absolutely.
have a couple years until they're really ready to be back on top of that division. The Chiefs are retooling as well. They're in the process, like it or not. Like they didn't want to be, but they are because their offense just really hasn't been there for them. Um, I think a team that if they were to make, I guess, like a Colts type of jump where you aren't expecting something crazy from your offense, you're not the Texans, but you're going from a team that has no
Just more
quarterback.
efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you can throw the ball and win, like if you can do what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing, or
Yeah,
you can do
maybe.
what,
Yeah, and let's stop giving Josh Jacobs as many carries.
yeah. And I mean, Josh Jacobs is out, and all of a sudden Zamir White comes in. I don't know if you bring Josh Jacobs back. I would love him
I
to. I love team loyalty like that. But
I don't think you do for the contract that he's gonna expect. I agree. And
yeah, I mean,
Zamir White was better when he played. I mean, it's a small sample size, but it's not like
real good.
I feel like you bring Josh Jacobs back on a contract, it's gonna feel a lot like Zeke when he was signed by the Cowboys. And for maybe you won't regret it immediately, but there'll be a couple years unless it's a short deal. Like if they sign him for like a 2-year deal, that's different.
Yeah.
But if you sign him for 3-4 years, and most running backs don't get that anymore. But I feel like if you sign him for 3 years, you're gonna regret two of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially when like Zamir White costs nothing in comparison.
And he can pound the rock.
Yeah, Zamir White's good. He was good.
Yeah. Their whole team, I like what they're doing. I mean, I've said it about a bunch of teams now, but that's because that's what I like focusing on.
Yeah.
Their edges are good. Obviously, Max Crosby's been good for a little bit now, but Kuntz has really come on. Samir White, obviously, he's big time for them. Devontae is not going to leave, so you have a wide receiver one, a true wide receiver one for
Yeah.
whoever you bring in next year.
Yeah, which is huge for the development of a quarterback, whatever quarterback you have.
Right. I mean, you want anyone to do your job. I mean, they have a pretty early pick too. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at it going, hey man, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. I mean, I'm getting a productive quarterback, and I don't have to put the pressure on them to be Oregon Bo Nix, where he's throwing the ball all over the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, a team that could actually do something.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
I agree. What do you think of Antonio Pierce as a coach? And then in a larger discussion, um, coaches who aren't necessarily known for having a great scheme, but rally a locker room around them.
it's irreplaceable. I mean, what you can see both with the fans and the players want him. Devontae Adams said it. They said, "We want him." I speak for the whole locker room.
Yeah.
We want AP. And so it's hard to move on from that. And I think as owners, I've seen this take a couple times. Like, as the Davis owners, you can look at this and say, hey, if he doesn't work out, we get to say, we gave you what you want. Now it's our turn.
Yeah.
So
I
you give him a little contract, maybe 3 years. I don't know how long you really want to sign him because you don't know.
yeah, I
And
agree.
then make sure he gets a good offensive coordinator in with him. And you're looking at a team that really could do something if you keep that locker room together. They
Mm-hmm.
want to be good. They feel like the old Raiders. They found their identity again.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just give them a quarterback who's not going to only throw like one completion a game, and maybe you can do something. Like,
Yeah.
you have Devontae Adams, you have the money put into the right places. Go get him, keep
Yeah.
him, let him do his thing. I don't know if Harbaugh is really going to come up, and if he does, I don't know if it's with the Raiders.
I don't know either. I feel like there's a lot of other places, I mean, not players, um,
Yeah,
that Harbaugh would want to go over the Raiders.
right. I mean,
And
division
that,
rival Chargers.
yeah, I'd rather go to the Chargers only because you already have a franchise quarterback. I mean, that's the hardest thing to get.
Right.
Um,
You can't look like an
but
idiot when you come in and you got Herbert.
yeah, usually I'm not for the gooey feely kind of stories about like winning a locker room. Obviously, it's not good to lose the locker room, but generally speaking, I'm not necessarily for a coach who to be a head coach just because he wins the locker room. But Antonio Pierce has shown that like obviously the players believe in him, but he's won games, legit games, like against the Chiefs, and there were some weird games where like they got shut out by the Vikings. I'm still not sure what happened in that game, and then put up 62 on the Chargers. But I think he's shown enough to get a short contract. I don't think he's like a long-term contract that you want to sign. And especially with the Raiders, and obviously everyone knows that they have problems with their budget. But I agree, like a 2-3 year deal, almost like a prove it deal, but as a
Yeah,
coach. And it's not like you can revamp this entire team right now. They want to win. So you might as well get the coach in there that the team believes in.
exactly. You want your window. This is your window. Like, you accidentally fell on a spot where you're kind of middle of the pack in your division. You're a quarterback away from maybe being good in your division.
Yeah.
If the Chiefs continue to struggle, you're looking real good in your division. So
If
you want to
you're
make
the
the playoffs.
Raiders, if you're the Raiders, do you think about trading for a guy like I mean, obviously you can see if Kyler's available. There was rumors they're moving off Kyler, but like Justin Fields with his late season resurgence. And like trade, I mean like trade like a second or a third.
I don't imagine. Obviously, I'm not a big Fields fan, but even if I
Yeah.
really were to believe in the upside of Fields, you're I'm assuming you're keeping Antonio Pierce, and that's not the offensive system guy that you want there. If you're
Yeah.
going to trade for a guy that you think his talent wasn't tapped in elsewhere, and he's going to come here and find it.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm the Colts, obviously they'll need a quarterback. You're looking at a guy who I have faith in to fix a quarterback, or
I
even the
agree.
Giants. Maybe you look there. But as
Yeah.
the Raiders, you have a guy who's kind of more defensive, and you don't know what's going to come from your offense. I'd rather see a much more neutral approach. Do you pick somebody who you have faith in the draft, or a real cheap filler, and
Yeah.
you kind of start from there?
Yeah. I agree. If they trade for I just brought it up because I know that like there's a lot of talk right now about do you trade Fields or not? And I think both of us agree trade Fields to reset the rookie contract, regardless of what you think of Fields. Um, but then he has to go somewhere. So it just popped in my mind. But I agree. Like if you trade for Fields, like what are you doing? Because you're not competing with Fields,
No, and
and
it's
you're
more of a
not.
Raiders thing than anything else.
Yeah, it is very Raiders. But yeah, I agree. I don't know what you're doing with Fields there. I think you draft a quarterback in round one. like a Michael Penix or Bo Nix or someone like that.
I mean,
And
imagine what he could do. They've
yeah,
got a good O line. You don't have to worry about pressure destroying your quarterback. Like that's a
yeah,
better situation than a lot of quarterbacks end up in. You got Devontae Adams and a good O line.
yeah,
Can't complain.
agreed. Hmm.
So that's kind of it for them, right? Like they have an interesting team, but there's a lot of teams that have interesting futures as well. A lot of head coach changes. The Seahawks just moved Pete Carroll up to an advisor position, probably for the better. I
Yeah,
love Pete Carroll, and he said, I'm not done, and he doesn't have to be done. But I don't know if he was going to be able to win another Super Bowl in Seattle.
yeah, I'm not sure either. Pete Carroll, I mean, it just happened. I haven't formulated my thoughts because it's been like 5 hours since it happened or something like that.
Right.
Um, but I do agree. I don't know what Pete Carroll was doing. I mean, they only had well, they had a season when Russ was injured, but they really have only had like one season where they didn't make the playoffs. But I don't hate it at all as a front office saying let's move on from. I mean, Pete Carroll's really old too. You might want to just find. It's not a bad idea just moving on from him, and you can keep him in administration or some higher up thing somewhere. But just to move on to find the coach of the future, because I mean that's almost as important as finding the right quarterback.
Almost more important because you've got
Yeah.
Gino. Like you don't really have your quarterback at the future per se.
Absolutely not. And if you're gonna get a new quarterback, which I think they might get a new rookie quarterback this year and have him sit behind Gino, it's a good idea to just give him the coach now rather than, especially if you think you might fire Pete Carroll in the near future, just fire him now. And I feel like I'm a believer in that. Like if you think you might fire a coach, um, how many times have teams thought, or like the rumors around, oh, it's this coach has one last chance to prove it, and then they prove it? Almost
It's not
never,
happening.
almost never. So if
Yeah.
you feel like you're gonna give, if you want to give the coach that one last year, honestly, just get rid of him now. And then I guess Matt Eberflus this year kind of saved himself with the Bears. But again, I don't think that Matt Eberflus is the coach in 5 years there. It's a lot easier for a rookie quarterback to just have consistency instead of learn a system and then learn a new system.
Exactly. And you get the quarterback that coach wants to,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
very
true.
helpful. And even if it's a late round guy where they're like, hey, Jordan Travis, Joe Milton, we want you, Michael Pratt, even. I mean, Michael Pratt's a
Yeah.
little beast. Like, you take one of them and you say, if this is your guy, this is your guy. Like, it's a fifth rounder. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's like it's so low reward. I was talking to you about this. It's so low reward, but so high. I mean, so low risk, not low reward. If you hit on that, that's so high reward. I mean, look at Jalen Hurts when he was on it was a second round pick, but even second round pick is way lower contract than even first round pick, and even way lower than a veteran who's on a 50 million per year deal,
Right.
which he currently is now. I mean, it opens up a huge window. Niners with Purdy right now. When the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl, it was with Mahomes, but that was on a first round pick deal. But still, I mean, if you get in a later round, it's a huge, huge advantage.
And they know that. They did it with Russ. Russ was
Yeah,
a third rounder. So you're looking at a team that has done it. They probably have confidence they can do it again. Right. Like they've been a pretty solid organization for the most part of my football life. And so I think they're approaching this going, hey, we're the Seahawks. We're still pretty solid. We still have a lot of good players, a lot of young players. Let's invest in this team for the future
mm-hmm.
instead of making one last run with Pete. Let's just, and now if he retires in a year, nobody's going to care. He's not going to get fired from head coaching. He gets to sail off into the sunset however he wants, which is
Yeah,
great. It's great.
yeah,
Then you don't have to look bad. It doesn't look like, oh, Pete Carroll got fired because he couldn't do it at the end of the day. Like
yeah,
he gets a nice exit. You get still a very valuable coach
yeah,
who's not a coach. It's great for them.
yeah. Speaking of not great coaches, Falcons fired Arthur Smith. I think if they didn't fire him, it would have been shocking because I think that he should have been fired last year. But to me, Arthur Smith honestly was someone who, when he came into Atlanta, I had high hopes for because the Tennessee Titans at that time were coming off like 2 to 3 years of elite Tannehill, and really, really solid offense. And
Mhm.
I didn't expect him to do what he did in Atlanta, but yeah, I did not. Going back 3 years, I would have been surprised for this to be the outcome. But looking at it now, it was very obvious. I mean, Arthur Smith has been terrible, terrible as a head coach. They've shown no improvement in any of the years that he's been here. They haven't made the playoffs. Their roster really, it's gotten better, not significantly better, but it's gotten better to the point where they should be a lot better, and they're not.
Mhm. And I mean, the Falcons, like it's good for them. They have a really good defense. They have a lot of promising guys in offense. That's kind of why he got fired.
Yeah,
And like we were talking about with the Seahawks, you're looking at a team that has to change their quarterback. So you can bring in a guy who either brings an offensive coordinator with him or is the offensive guy who says, "This is what I want in my quarterback." And you have 5 years to prove it.
yeah,
And they have an early enough pick too. They can take a Bo Nix. They can take a Michael Penix. They've got a good O line. They've got a good receiver. They've got a great tight end. They have a great running game. Like
yeah,
this is a team that has the offense to fill around a quarterback if they hit. So
yeah.
having that early draft pick, I mean, it's not that early. They still won enough games to screw themselves, but
It's early enough that you're not picking at the end of the first round. This quarterback class feels like 2021. Yeah, 2021, where like a Mac Jones or a Justin Fields is in the middle of the round and who's a legit quarterback prospect that you can totally take.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is a great year for them. Like, good on them for trying it. I mean, I know you didn't like giving Arthur Smith another year, but
No, I
maybe
did
maybe
not.
they organizationally had a lot of faith in Desmond Ritter. He didn't look bad in his preseason, didn't look horrible when he came in for the end of the season last year,
Yeah.
but he really made no improvements. And I was big on him. I wanted to see him get that opportunity, and he got it for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely got that opportunity. And it's time for them to move on as an organization. And they played it pretty well by giving a completely blank slate for everybody, but still having a great unit around. They need some improvements for sure, like most teams do. But when you're a quarterback away from having a pretty solid offense and you
Yeah.
have a really good defense, that's a spot I'd want to be in organizationally. I don't know.
If I'm a coach, the Falcons are one of my top choices as
Yeah,
far as like a coach being hired. Like if I'm like a Kellen Moore, Ben Johnson, a Bobby Slowick, I think Bobby Slowick's
Bobby Slowick.
a really good head coach candidate. Oh
Yeah,
man,
especially for a team that needs a
Bobby
quarterback.
Slowick, yeah, Bobby Slowick. I mean, you give D'Amico Ryan's a lot of credit. He's a defensive guy. I mean, a lot of the offensive success has come from PFF Bobby, former PFF Bobby Slowick. I think that would be really interesting to see him with a rookie quarterback and two really good. I'll call Kyle Pitts an X receiver because realistically,
Pretty much
that's
what
what
he
he
is.
plays. Two X receivers in Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and an amazing running back in Bijan. A pretty solid offensive line too. They don't really. It's not a weakness the way that like the Jets have a weakness there. Um, yeah, that I already have my dream scenario for Bobby Slowick. It's the Falcons.
All right, let's
Okay.
just go on to the playoffs. I mean, we got the playoff matches are finally set. We talked a lot about these playoff teams already, but it's time to finally look at some brackets. I mean, we got some good matchups. So what do you got, Josh?
Here's what I think how the playoffs are gonna go at least. It's subject to whatever happens with injuries. I mean, when I made this, it was before Laporta got injured. I don't really think that changes it that much. I mean, a tight end is huge. A good tight end is huge, but I don't think it moves the needle like a quarterback getting injured. But first, we talked about this earlier. I think the Bills will steamroll the Steelers. um, I feel like you might have something similar happening. Same with like I really like the Texans. I think that they can put up a fight, but right now the Browns are so hot. I don't know how you can justify having them losing to the Texans. I really don't know. The Dolphins Chiefs, I hear predicted an upset. I think that the Dolphins will win. It's only considered an update because of an upset because of what happened last Sunday though. Because
Mm.
if they had won the game, the Dolphins would be the 2 seed, and then they'd actually be considered better. That's because that's how seeding works. That totally makes sense. But I think that the Dolphins are gonna beat the Chiefs. I just don't think that the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have been spiraling, obviously not as bad as the Eagles have, but I this doesn't feel like they're an up and coming team right now. It feels like they're a team that's gotten worse every week of the season. And the
Mhm.
Dolphins have also spiraled, but I think that the Dolphins can, like you said, run the ball really hard, really well, really, really well, and avoid dealing with the Chiefs defensive backs who are causing problems for everyone. And so I think that's the matchup of the game. And as long as Tua isn't playing hero ball, I think that they win that game. Um, which side should I go? AFC or
Walk through the
NFC?
AFC first. Why not?
Okay. Next, if the Browns win, they'll play the Bills because the sixth seed fifth. Yeah. Okay. I'm just making sure I have it right. Um, the Browns playing the Bills. I love the Bills. I thought that they were a sleeper for going to the Super Bowl. I think that Josh Allen's going to get hot. And if Josh Allen is playing elite 90 plus PFF grade football, I don't think that the Browns, even though their defense is great, I don't think that the Browns are stopping the Bills. Because overall, I think that the Bills are a really strong team. I think that they can combat a lot of what the Browns do well, as far as the Browns are good at running and passing, but not great at both. And I think the Bills are also good at stopping both the run and the pass. It seems like a good matchup defensively, but I don't think that the Browns will. Again, I'm in my playoff bracket. I'm assuming that Josh Allen is playing lights out. I think that they're going to win that game. On the other side, the Bengals and the Dolphins, I see this going very similarly to how the regular season went. I don't think a lot's changed. If anything, the Dolphins have gotten worse because now I don't think that they have Bradley Chubb, and then Jalen
Jalen
Phillips is out
Phillips.
for a long time. Yeah, so I don't think that the Dolphins are going to be able to hang with the hang with the Ravens, at least defensively. I think that, I mean, you can make an argument they're similar offensively, but I don't think that the Miami defense is going to hold up.
Mm-mm.
Um, Moving from there, that would place the Bills against the Ravens. And I do think that, again, this is assuming that Josh Allen is playing at 90 plus level. That's what I think will happen. I still don't think it's enough to beat the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens are so good right now. Lamar's playing really well. He's not making a lot of mistakes, which has been a problem for Lamar in the past. And that defense is playing amazing. The receivers, I mean, they got Zay Flowers, Odell, Rashad Bateman's playing pretty well. I mean, I don't feel like they have a number one. Isaiah Likely is also playing really well, but I think that they
Jeez.
they have they have enough receivers there, and I think that that's going to end up winning them the game because the Bills secondary has just been so suspect lately that I think that's going to lose them that game. On the other side, um, Packers Cowboys. I think Jordan Love has been good but overperforming. I mean, he's played efficiency wise, he's played really well down the stretch, but I think that comes to an end against the Cowboys because I don't think that the Packers will be able to slow down the Cowboys enough, and the Cowboys will just get into the game plan that they want to do and just execute, be up, rush the passer, and beat the Packers. Next with the Eagles Bucks, I have the Eagles winning because I think that they'll be favored. Maybe not. Man, this last week, I don't know. But I think that the Eagles win. I think um with a week to kind of refocus, and I think mentally you can kind of refocus to coming into the playoffs as a team because it does feel a lot bigger than a week 18 game against the Giants. Um, so I think that the Eagles are able to pull it out and beat Baker Mayfield. I mean, Baker's good too, but I don't think he has enough to beat the Eagles. Lastly, for the wild card in the NFC side, I think that the Lions are going to beat the Rams. I think the Rams are a really hot team, just like the Browns. But the difference is, I think that the Browns are overall a much better team than the Rams. And while Stafford's playing at an MVP level right now, I don't think that the team is good enough to overcome a really, really solid overall team in the Lions. Now, it wouldn't shock me if this goes the other way at all. It really wouldn't. But for right now, I think that the Lions are going to win the game. Moving on, the next round, that would be the Lions playing against the Cowboys, and then the Niners playing against the Eagles. For Lions Cowboys, I mean, we just saw them play the other day, and the Lions should have beat them. If we're being completely honest, should have beat them, but got screwed over by the refs. And I don't think it's going to play out exactly how it played out in the regular season, but I think that at the end of the day, the Cowboys need to be up, and the Lions don't need to be up to come out up in the game. And so I think if you look at the range of outcomes, I think that 2/3 of the outcomes, which is it kind of starts in the middle where they're both even. And if the Lions are down, I think that they have a better chance at winning that compared to the Cowboys if they're in similar situations. So that's the reason that I'm going Lions. I know it sounds dumb, but like it's more of like a probability statistics thing, because I think on paper they're both very, very even teams.
Mhm.
Um, as far as the Eagles Niners go, I mean the Niners have not won their last two, but they're still a very hot team right now. Winning like five of their last seven, against some really good teams too. I think that the Niners team roll the Eagles. The Eagles are just, I mean, when you're barely in my mind beating the Bucks, I don't really think that you stand a chance against the Niners. Now, I am a Niners fan, so that could be biased, and I'm interested to see what you think. But at least that's what I think about in that matchup. And then the last game before the Super Bowl, Lions, Niners. I think that the Lions are a good team, but they also don't have a lot of playoff experience either. They're very young, and I don't think that their defense is going to be able to handle what the Niners throw them offensively. And I also think that the Niners defense can at least hang with the Lions. And so if you look at it that way, I think that the overall differential is the Niners being slightly better. But I think that this will be a close game. And finally, the Niners versus the Ravens. I have the Niners winning, because I think that the Niners will come into the game very differently. I think the last time that they played, Purdy's first two interceptions were tipped passes, which are unlucky, but also not very sticky in the sense that like those don't happen consistently for any given quarterback. And I think that if those interceptions didn't happen, that game would have gone a lot differently. So I think that the Niners come in with a similar game plan, but don't make those mistakes. And I think that if they do that, I think that they can pull it out against the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be if we get another rematch of this game. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
that's an amazing Super Bowl.
yeah, as a Niners fan, obviously I want us to win, but I would just be excited to see this game again as a football fan.
And it's another Super Bowl rematch too.
Yeah.
We're pulling out all the narratives, man.
Yeah, with Harbaugh, after Harbaugh wins the college championship too.
Right. It's just made to be.
It really is. All right, Tyler, your turn.
All right. Let's just get right into it. I mean, it's the same matchups. So, wild card weekend, there's not going to be too many differences. I don't have the Steelers doing anything really. I think the Bills will play to their level and it'll be an entertaining enough game. But I just I find it very hard to believe that Mason Rudolph can lead the Steelers to a playoff victory. And then Browns Texans. This is one that I really struggled with because while the Browns are amazing, they're red hot, the Texans have exactly what it takes to stop the Browns. I truly believe that not only is everyone else in the AFC hoping Houston come out on top in this game, they can. And I do have the Browns winning it just because on paper it is hard to believe that CJ Stroud will be able to overcome this defense while still also having to silence that offense. But it could happen. I mean, you're at home, you have a big playoff game, but it is a first year head coach. It's a first year quarterback. It's a very young team, very young defense, very young offense. I wouldn't be surprised if they can just kind of treat it like real business. It'll be a good game, I believe. It'll be some good football, even if the score doesn't come out to be good. Um, can't get mad at good football, and that's something that I truly believe in. So I'm excited for the game, but I do have the Browns winning. Going on, we do have that Chiefs Dolphins game, and I talked about it a little bit. That running game for the Dolphins is going to be a difference maker. In my opinion, you're looking at two teams that are kind of struggling to find themselves. They slipped a little bit, to say the least. But the Dolphins haven't slipped nearly as bad. Their inconsistency issues kind of stem from quarterback, which can be fixed and won't be as much of a problem in a game like a freezing cold 0 degree game in Arrowhead. Whereas you're looking at the Chiefs, whose problems stem from everything but the quarterback. And I just don't really see that matchup being great for the Chiefs. This is a game that the Chiefs could still somehow win, but when it comes down to this, if it comes down to the last drive, who's winning? It's going to be the Dolphins. They can run the ball, but they can throw it. They have Tyreek, they have Waddle, they have a very good team around them. Whereas the Chiefs, they've always been able to rely on that Kelsey final drive, crazy heroics where he gets 40 yards down the middle of the field and nobody was covering him. But they don't have that anymore. He hasn't done it all year. I find it hard to imagine he'll do it in the playoffs this year. He could, I'm sure he could find it again next year, but I just really don't think this is their year. I think this is their year to take a little bit of an earlier draft pick, retool, and kind of come into next year with a completely different set of ideas on how they want to approach this game. Going through, then we have the Browns at Bills. This is another one that's real hard. The Bills could take out the Browns here really easily, but I just worry about Josh Allen's turnovers. I'm a huge Josh Allen fan. I've been for a very long time now, since he saved my fantasy season multiple years ago. He won me a league. Thanks, Josh Allen. But I mean, you're looking at a team that is so inconsistent versus a team like the Browns that has been so consistent. And I do believe consistency can win in the playoffs. You're going to be in Buffalo. It's going to be more of a defensive game than the Bills want it to be. Because if the offenses are limited, who has better defense? The Browns, 100%. So it's a difficult matchup. It's a matchup.
Sorry. I was going through my email. Ignore that.
But Josh Allen does have a huge advantage being at home. That's something that I was looking at a little bit for a different video that I was going to do. His splits at home are amazing. And even though it's cold, even though it's Buffalo, he can win at home. He can produce at home. He doubles his touchdowns. He has less interceptions. He's a guy who thrives in Buffalo, and Buffalo thrives with him. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills do come out on top. They have that boomer bust mentality to where they could accidentally lose to the Steelers, but they could also make it to the Super Bowl. So I don't really know what to make of them, but I don't believe that Josh Allen's going to be able to keep those turnovers so low against such a good defense that really just smothers the pass. And then, of course, going down, we have Ravens Dolphins. Kind of like what you said, I just don't think the Dolphins really have a chance unless they really find their groove against the Chiefs. But it's going to be hard to find your groove against the Chiefs, and it's going to be even harder to find it against the Ravens. These are both really good defenses they had to play, and just it's tough when you have one of the more questionable defenses on the AFC side of the playoffs, and your offense is struggling with a consistency issue and struggling with who they are a little bit. It's just a very tough matchup for you no matter where you go. Yeah. Honestly, the only team I'd feel confident with if I was the Dolphins would be the Steelers.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're almost seeded appropriately because of that. I feel like the 6th seed is pretty right for them. They have a lot to prove, and I hope that kind of makes them fight for it. And maybe they prove someone wrong. And I hope they do. But assuming they don't, you have a Browns-Ravens divisional matchup, AFC champs game. And once again, the Browns could win this. The Browns could go to the Super Bowl. They could lose to the Texans. There's a lot of volatility in these playoffs, but I do have the Ravens coming out on top. Their offense is a difference maker. They play against elite defenses and look elite. They do what good teams do, and they beat other good teams.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens really just on paper are hard to imagine losing. I'm sure they will. It is the Ravens. They do that. They kind of lack that end of season consistency that you'd want to see, but the Ravens haven't really been in this position in a while where they are the ones that they are truly on top and don't have to prove anyone wrong. They have proven who they are. And so it's hard to imagine them not going to the Super Bowl when you're just looking at matchups on paper. When the game comes to the game, that's a completely different story. But I truly do see the AFC coming down to can anyone beat the Ravens? The Browns have an amazing chance. I think if you're Baltimore, you're looking at Houston saying, hey, man, please just take him out for us. That'd be really much appreciated. But you're just hoping that you don't have to play the Browns because the Browns can beat you. And then, of course, going to the NFC, Cowboys, Green Bay, I think is a more interesting matchup than a lot of people give it credit to. I was listening to Bootleg Football. They kind of see the same things. Um, if I didn't already have the Eagles losing a little bit later, uh, I would have the Cowboys losing. I don't see them being as strong as everyone thinks they are. And that's not a hit on, like, they've been playing amazing football, but I do think they have that volatility that a lot of the NFC teams have. That even though you have a good record, and even though you've kind of looked really good lately, there's no confidence in the fact that you are an elite team. I think they were a really good team, but I don't know if I'd call them elite. And I think that could come out against the Packers. I don't imagine it does. If you were betting on paper, you'd for sure want to bet on the Cowboys winning. But Jordan Love, if he has a Jordan Love game, that could mean you're either scoring 40 on him or you lose on accident. And Jordan Love all of a sudden is taking Green Bay to a divisional game in his first season as a starter. This is a situation that you didn't really want to be in as a Cowboys. You would have loved to see someone else. You would have loved to see the Rams, but I think the Packers have what it takes to be an underdog and win this game. But the Cowboys, in the end, once CeeDee Lamb starts going, it's hard to stop him. The Green Bay's, they traded away Rasul Douglas. They traded away their best corner. So I don't know if they can stop him. Should they be able to? Yes, but I really just don't imagine it. They're at home. It's Dallas. They most likely will find a way to win this game. Then, of course, Eagles at Tampa Bay. I have the Buccaneers winning. It's a little bit of an interesting take, but I just watching the tape on the Eagles offense and seeing what they're doing. The Eagles offense just isn't the Eagles offense right now. We've talked about it a little bit in the top of the show, but they're lacking that identity. They have forgotten how to play just we're better than you football because they should be able to do this against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have been impressive, but not Eagles level of talent. And in the end, if I had to be like, hey, I got a one-on-one matchup with Devontae Smith or AJ Brown or even Dallas Goedert against anyone on the Buccaneers defense, I'd want to take the offensive guy. And you have a quarterback that's making $50 million a year. You should have confidence, but they're lacking that. And I think it's getting to their heads a little bit. If you're the Eagles, this is kind of a dream scenario for you. You have a team that is probably the weakest in terms of highest ceiling, but they do also have a very high floor. They're one of the few very stable teams in the NFC, in my opinion. And this is the team that you can get a win against and you can find yourself again. You can roll into the divisional week feeling very confident, but you do also run the risk of losing to Baker Mayfield, which is not something you really want to do in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a game that I'd want as an Eagles fan because I do think the Eagles could very much find themselves and go back to the football they were playing last year where Jalen Hurts was second in MVP voting and they went to the Super Bowl. But unfortunately, they just aren't playing that right now. The defense has been getting lit up and Baker Mayfield's been lighting up defenses, as weird as it sounds. And you take away last week, he's been absolutely stunning. He has had multiple perfect passer grades. Like, this is a guy who's proving to the NFL that he's here to stay. And I think he can really prove it with a win. And he fights. So they're not going to have an easy win, even if they come up early. And then Lions, Rams. This is one that I can also see. I could see an upset on all these NFC games, quite honestly. The NFC game they're just a strange group of teams. Every
Yeah.
team seems to have a strong weakness. They're very volatile. But I do have the Lions winning. The Lions have had their fair share of sad losses already. And it's hard to imagine them doing it again, especially against Matthew Stafford at home. But it is Matthew Stafford at home. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams came in and kind of took over a little bit. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be very fun to watch. This is a game where you can kind of root for both sides. So no matter who wins, it's a win-win for the fan. But I think just on paper, the Lions should win. They have a better team overall, and I do believe that they have the higher upside to blow them out if it comes to it. And in a shootout, I would be taking, quite honestly, I'd take the Lions. Moving into the divisional round, Lions at Cowboys. I do have the Lions winning just because, like you said, that matchup, the Lions should have won. Yes. But even if you take away that weird fluke and you have a completely new game and you just reset the game, put it back at 0-0, say, run it all back, you have 4 more quarters. I genuinely think the Lions would be able to win. They didn't play their kind of football. And now you have a lot of time to be able to go back, rethink, what did we do wrong? And so you have that tape of what the Cowboys are going to try to do to stop your offense. And that's going to be the key because Jared Goff can get shaky when he's under pressure. So you're going to find a way to avoid that. You know that you can run the ball with your extremely talented receivers and your extremely talented running backs. Do it. So I just think on paper, like this is all on paper, you're looking at a Lions team that has the skill players to be able to beat out Dallas. And that's hard to do. Dallas is a very talented roster, but I don't think Mike McCarthy will be able to coach his way out of already having tape out and how he wants to beat them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, going down to San Francisco, I don't think there's much of a question. It's like you said, you had the Eagles barely able to beat the Bucks. I have them losing to them. So the Buccaneers really just, it's nice for them to make the divisional round. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Then, of
Not
course,
good for their future, but
no, not quite good for their future.
No, but yeah.
But it's good for the fans. It's good for the team, especially if
it makes the team
Baker.
money, which at the end of the day is
that's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's good if they do keep Baker. You get to say, hey, Baker just took us to a divisional game.
Yeah.
Baker did more than anyone but Tom Brady has done for us. So
yeah, true.
And then you're looking at Lions, Niners. It's hard to imagine the Lions winning, but they could. I just don't see it really happening. Brock Purdy would kind of have to have a meltdown. And it's not like he's facing an absolutely stunning secondary with Detroit. So I don't imagine that happening, but I do imagine it happening a little bit more in the Super Bowl. Will he have a 4-pick game like last time? No, of course not. It's going to be a much better played game because the film's out there. You know what they're going to do. You're not going to have the same tip passes that go for picks. But I just do believe that once the Niners fell behind, they didn't show the fight to be able to fight back against that. And part of it is that Purdy was shook, and you can't really expect much from Brock Purdy after he threw 2 kind of fluky picks and everything seems to be going against him. But the Ravens just feel like a better team on paper, looking at their matchup, looking at what they did against them very recently. The Ravens should win, but I also imagine that the Ravens might get knocked out before they make the Super Bowl. But just putting it out matchup by matchup, I do believe the Ravens can win the Super Bowl. And I know it's chalky. We both picked the 1 seed from both conferences, but I do believe there's a
to
lot
be
of
fair,
volatility.
in the last couple years, it's been like almost all 1 seeds. Yeah. Like last year, it was 2 1 seeds that win. I mean, having that bye is so huge too. That plays a factor into it.
Especially when you're a team like the Ravens, where you have a quarterback who gets out of the pocket a lot. Like, if I'm the Ravens and I have Lamar Jackson resting, that's a win for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's going to be our playoff brackets. I mean, hopefully these get proven wrong. I would love to see both the Eagles and Cowboys lose. That would be awesome. But there's so much volatility in these playoffs.
Yeah.
All right. Now it's time for our new favorite section, Player of the Week. We decided to come up with a weird random player kind of favorite that we wanted to bring up. Josh, if you want to take us away, I audibly laughed when I saw your pick.
Yeah.
I think it's quite funny.
My pick, because I saw this in like a video that I was watching about like Dree Archer getting a card in Madden this year. I remember Dree Archer back in Madden 16. He had this, like, I looked it up. I didn't remember the exact number, but he had the 64 overall card with 96 speed. And I remember I remember selling like whatever running back I had to specifically pick him up. Because I was like, I can use the coins elsewhere. But then I looked at his stats and I knew he wasn't good because I haven't seen him in Madden or anything since then. He had 10 total rushes for 40 yards in his career and 7 catches on 10 targets for 23 yards. And that was in 1 year in 2014. And then in 2015, he was only used as a kick returner. So he was never, ever a good player. I don't want to say that. But yeah, man, that guy was a Madden Mobile legend.
And in your heart, he was a great player.
Yeah.
And mine is Mercedes Lewis. He's not quite as fringy. He's had a very long career, and that's kind of why I like him. It's his 18th season. He got a 1 year deal coming off of a very strange year in which he produced nothing on offense, but he blocks. And that's the name of his game. This year, 2023, he has 4 receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown, which without that touchdown, that's a really bad stat line. I mean, even with the touchdown, it's bad, but he doesn't receive. His whole game has been, I don't really receive the ball that much. It's his
Yeah.
18th season. He's only had 500 plus yards twice, and they were in 09 and 2010. So before I was even old enough to understand football that much, back then, a lot of different things were happening in the game. He's earned over $62 million for only 5,000 total yards in his career, which obviously blocking is hard to quantify, but you're looking at a guy who's coming in his teams going, hey, man, I can do nothing for your passing game, but boy, can I block. And $62 million had gone to that cause.
Yeah.
Not to mention, he's had 3 multi-year deals. He's also signed quite a few 1 year deals. It seems to be since his last multi-year deal, it's just 1 year deal, 1 year deal, 1 year deal. They're waiting until he can't block anymore. And this year, he's had his best PFF grade since 2012 for his age 39 season. I mean, it's hard to be mad at that. It's been over 10 years since he was this good, and here he
Yeah.
is.
I was just looking at his grades
So
right now.
can't be mad at it. I love Mercedes Lewis. I'm glad. And he's PFF's 6th ranked tight end right now. So that's an absolute W for us.
Yeah, he's been good this year. I was looking back at his grades for the past like 6 years, and like 6 years ago he wasn't playing too well, like overall. But I mean, the last like 3 years he's been playing a lot better. Like he's been like a good role player to starter, honestly, as far as grading goes. Not receiving wise, but efficiency wise, he's been pretty good. Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode back. It was great to be back with Tyler. And we'll catch you next week.